Um, this is a poem with 3 parts, and it's named The Lost World. Alas didn't invent such a good title. It was invented or discovered by Arthur Conan Doyle. He wrote a science fiction book about a Professor Challenger, a scientist with a great big black beard, who went to South America and behind some plateaus discovered some dinosaurs in a world that was just the way the world was 1,000,000 years ago. And they made a movie of it in about 1924. It was the King Kong of its day. And as I used to go back and forth to school on the top deck of a double-decker bus in Hollywood, we went right by the studio where they made it, and there were these big papier-mâché dinosaurs and pterodactyls that stared over at the fence at you, and you looked back at them. In this first section is called Children's Arms, and it's about a little boy who's living with his grandmother and his grandfather and his great-grandmother there in Hollywood. You'll soon guess that I'm the little boy, or rather I was the little boy, or rather I am the little boy. And let's see. It's also, except one thing, when a Union captain leans down and lifts my great-grandmother up and puts her on his horse when she was a little girl. I made that up. I couldn't resist it. But everything else really happened. One thing I'd like to remind you of, there used to be a play that was first very popular all over the English-speaking world, and then was very popular with high school dramatic clubs by Sir Philip, by Barry, named The Admirable Crichton. And it was the most enchanting and reassuring in many ways of all desert island plays. There's this aristocratic English family with their butler who are wrecked on the island. And before long, the butler, the Admirable Crichton, is ruling everybody magnanimously and virtuously. And finally, he condescends to propose to the daughter of the family, and they're about to be married when an English boat comes, and then they all go back to the real world where he becomes a butler again. And I was enchanted to know when I was talking to my wife about it, why she said that she almost got the part of that daughter of the family when her high school put it on, and if it hadn't been for one wicked woman whom I hope has been punished sufficiently by now, as is probably the case, if it hadn't been for that woman, my wife would have been the heroine. As you can imagine, I think of my wife as the heroine in it without any trouble at all. Several times there's street names in this, Sunset Boulevard and Vine and so on. I know you know them. So I'll read you the first. This is about 5 pages long. Then there's a very short second section, just a page. Then there's a last section that's just exactly the length of this. The man says, thinking back about being a little boy, he says, "On my way home, I pass a cameraman on a platform on the bumper of a car inside which rolling and plunging, a comedian is working. On one white lot, I see a star stumble to her igloo through the howling gale of the wind machines. On Melrose, a dinosaur and pterodactyl, with their immense pale papier-mâché smiles, look over the fence of the lost world. Whispering to myself the tale these shout, done with my schoolwork, I commence my real life. My arsenal, my workshop opens, and in impotent omnipotence, I put on the helmet and the breastplate pop cut out and soldered for me. Here is the shield I sawed from beaver board and painted. Here on top, the bow that only Odysseus can wield, and 11 vermilion-ringed, goose-feathered arrows. The 12th was broken on the battlefield when, searching among snap beans and potatoes, I stepped on it. Some dry weeds, a dead cane, are my spears. The knife on the bureaus, my throwing knife. The small, unpainted biplane without wheels that so often, helped by human hands, has taken off from, landed on the counterpane, is my spad. Oh, dead list that misunderstands and laughs at and lies about the new live wild loves it lists, that sets upright in the sands of age in which nothing grows, where all our friends are old. A few dried leaves marked, this is the green wood. Oh, arms that arm for a child's oars, the child. And yet they're good, if anything is good, against his enemies. Across the seas, at the bottom of the world, where childhood sits on its desert island with Achilles and Pitamakan, the white Blackfoot. In the black auditorium, my heart at ease, I watch the furred castaways, the seniors put a play on every spring, tame their wild beasts, erect their treehouse, chatting over their fruit, their coconuts, they relish their stately feasts. The family's servant, their magnanimous master now, rules them by right. Nature's priests, they worship at nature's altar. When, with decorous affection, the admirable Crichton kisses a girl like a big Wendy, all of us squirm or sit up in our seats. Undone, when an English sail is sighted, the prisoners escape from their Eden to the world, the real one, where servants are servants, masters, masters, and no one's magnanimous. The lights go on, and we go off, robbed of our fruit, our furs. The island that the children ran is gone. The island sang to me, believe, believe. And didn't I know a lady with a lion? Each evening, as the sun sank, didn't I grieve to leave my tree house for reality? There was nothing there for me to disbelieve. At peace among my weapons, I sit in my tree and feel Friday night, then Saturday, then Sunday. You all remember that feeling, don't you? Late Friday afternoon, you felt Friday night, then Saturday, then Sunday. It hardly seemed that the world would ever get to Monday. I'm dreaming of a wolf as Mama wakes me, and a tall girl who is outside. It's gray. I can't remember. I jump up and dress. We eat in the lighted kitchen. And what is play for me, for them is a habit. Happiness is a quiet presence, breathless and familiar. My grandfather and I sit there in oneness as the sunset bus, lit by the lavender and rose of sunrise, takes us to the dark, echoing cavern where Pop, a worker, works for our living. As he rules a mark, a short square pencil in his short square hand on a great sheet of copper, I make some remark he doesn't hear. In that hard maze, in that land that grown men live in the world of work, he measures, shears, solders, and I stand empty-handed watching him. I wander into the murk, the naked light bulbs pierce. The workman, making something, say something to the boy in his white shirt. I jerk as the sparks fly at me. The man hammering as acid hisses and the solder turns to silver seems to me a dwarf hammering out the ring in the world under the world. The hours blur, bored and not bored. I bend things out of lead. I wash my smudged hands as my grandfather washes his black ones with their gritty soap. Ahead, past their time clock, their pay window, is the blue and gold and white of noon. The sooty thread up which the laborers feel their way into their wives and houses is money. The fact of life, the secret the grown-ups share is what to do to make money. The husband, Adam, Eve, his wife, have learned how not to have to do without till Santa Claus brings them their Boy Scout knife. Nor do they find things in dreams, carry a paper route, sell Christmas seals. Starting his Saturday, his Sunday, Pop tells me what I love to hear about, his boyhood in Shelpable. I play what he plays, hunt what he hunts, remember what he remembers. It seems to me I could stay in that dark forest, lit by one fading ember of his campfire forever. But we're home. I run in love to each familiar member of this little state, clustered about the dome of St. Nicholas. This city in which my rabbit depends on me and I on everyone. This first Rome of childhood, so absolute in every habit that when we hear the world our jailer say, "Tell me, art thou a Roman?" The time we inhabit drops from our shoulders And we answer, yea. I stand at Caesar's judgment seat. I appeal unto Caesar. I wash my hands. Pop gives his pay envelope to Mama. We sit down to our meal. The phone rings. Mrs. Mercer wonders if I'd care to go to the library. That would be ideal, I say when Mama lets me. I comb my hair and find the 4 books I have out. The food of the gods was best. Liking that world where the children eat and grow giant and good, I swear, as I've often sworn, I'll never forget what it's like when I've grown up. A prelude by Chopin, hammered note by note, like alphabet box, comes from next door. It's played with real feeling, the feeling of being indoors practicing. And yet, it's not as if a gray electric stealing to the curb on silent wheels has come, and I see on the back seat, sight more appealing than any human sight, my own friend Lucky, half wolf, half police dog. And he can play the piano, play that he does, that is, and jump so high for a ball that he turns a somersault. Hello, I say to the lady and hug Lucky. In my talk with the world, in which it tells me what I know, and I tell it I know, how strange that I know nothing, and yet it tells me what I know. I appreciate the animals who stand by purring, or else they sit and pant. It's so agreeable. If only people purred and panted. So now, Lucky and I sit in our row, Mrs. Mercer in hers. I take for granted the tiller by which she steers, the yellow roses in the bud vases, the whole enchanted drawing room of our progress. The glass encloses, as glass does, a womanish and childish and doggish universe. We press our noses to the glass and wish the angel and devilfish floating by on vine, on sunset, shut their eyes and press their noses to their glass and wish. The second poem is called A Night with Lions. The world's never been the same to me since Merrill Lynch, Pierce Spinner, and Bean lost that bean. And one of the other awful differences between now and then is that before every old Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer picture, in the days when you used to see Garbo in new pictures, there was always a big lion, and his mouth looked at you, and his mouth opened, and as soon as there were talkies, he roared. Well, I used to know the lady who owned that lion, and I used to go with my aunt and spend weekends with them in the country. I've always thought of myself as a romantic rather than a classic writer, but in a sense this is a classic poem because you'll notice that I talk about one lion, and actually that lady had 13. She had the Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer lion and his mate and a son and a daughter, and they all were married, and they had enough cubs to make up 13. And I've always just been enchanted by von Hofmannsthal's statement about, oh, well, I can't remember it, so you can see I'm still as romantic as can be. It's about classicism, and it says that you must firmly avoid exaggeration of any kind, and that the ability to do this is restraint or classicism. If I were restrained or classic, I could remember it right. It's Freudian forgetting. But anyway, I do feel that when I left out the 12 lions, it was I shouldn't have got into all this. I beg your pardon. This is named A Night with Lions, and the Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer lion is the one. When I was 12, we'd visit my aunt's friend who owned a lion, the Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer lion. I'd play with him, and he'd pretend to play with me. I was the real player, but he'd trot back and forth inside his cage till he got bored. I put Tawny in the prayer I didn't believe in, not at my age, but said still, just as I did everything in fours and gave to something on the average 1 cookie out of 3. And by my quartz, my ores, my wood with the bark on it, from the petrified forest, I put his dew claw. Now the lion roars, his slow, comfortable roars. I lie beside my young, tall, brown aunt out there in the past or future, and I sleepily confide my dream discovery. My breath comes fast whenever I see someone with your skin, hear someone with your voice. The lion's steadfast roar goes on in the darkness. I have been asleep a while when I remember you are you. And Tawny was the lion in Tarzan. In Tarzan. Just as we used to. I talk to you. You talk to me, or pretend to talk to me, as grown-up people do, of Jerrigan and Rupert Hughes, till in the end, I think, as a child thinks, you're my real friend. And the last poem, to make up this whole poem, the last part, is called A Street Off Sunset. I was reading about a week ago Morley Callahan's That Summer in Paris, that talks about Fitzgerald and Hemingway back in the late 1920s. And he and his wife went to see Joyce one night, and Joyce liked them. And after a while, he played them his favorite phonograph record. It was a record of an American evangelist preaching, a woman named Amy Semple McPherson. I've seen her preach. She had a sweet voice. She was tall, auburn, and dressed in a flowing white robe. When she baptized the people who were saved, they all put on flowing white waterproof robes, and so did she. And she used to broadcast every Sunday night And that was before loudspeakers. In those days, they had crystal sets. And so you could attach earphones to your crystal set and run them by wires to all the beds. And in my grandfather's house, why, every bed had its earphone, and so when you went to bed, you could listen, if it were Sunday night, to Amy Semple McPherson before you went to sleep, if you were forced to go to bed at 8 o'clock, as I was. Just about that time, don't you feel as if science fiction had been going on forever? You know, that the little Jesus read science fiction? But it isn't that way, really. I can remember the first purely science fiction magazine. It was named Amazing Stories, and I believe it started in the spring of 26, and how I used to read it. In here, the little boy is reading a story in Amazing Stories. And I'll read you the whole thing as the last thing tonight. A street off Sunset. Sometimes, as I drive by the factory that manufactures, after so long, Vicks Vapor Rub ointment, there rises over me a eucalyptus tree. I feel its stair sticks impressed on my palms, my insteps, as I climb to my treehouse. The gray leaves make me mix my coughing chest, anointed at bedtime, with the smell of the sap trickling from the tan trunk where the nails go in. My lifetime got rid of. I sit in a dark blue sedan beside my great-grandmother in Hollywood. We pass a windmill, a pink sphinx, an all-brand billboard. The pink sphinx was about as high as this stage and made out of stucco, and it was a real estate agent, and you went inside the door in its chest if you wanted to rent a house. We pass a windmill. It was a blue bakery. We pass a windmill, a pink sphinx on an all-brand billboard, thinking of Salambo, Robin Hood, the old prospector with his flapjack in the air. I sit with my hands folded. I am good. That night, as I lie crossways in an armchair reading Amazing Stories, there's a long parenthesis, and may I make a little motion to show where the parenthesis starts and then finally stop it? So here the child is in an armchair reading Amazing Stories. Just as, long before I'd lie by my rich uncle's polar bear on his domed library's reflecting floor in the last year of the First World War and see a poor two-seater being attacked by 4 triplanes on the cover of the Literary Digest and a camel coming to its aid. I'd feel the bear's fur warm and rough against me. The colors of the afternoon would fade. I'd reach into the bear's mouth and hold tight to its front tooth and think, I'm not afraid. That's the end of the parenthesis. There off Sunset, in the lamplit starlight, a scientist is getting ready to destroy the world. It's time for you to say goodnight, Mama tells me. I go on in breathless joy. Remember, tomorrow is a school day, Mama tells me. I go on in breathless joy. At last, I go to Mama in her gray silk, to Pop, to Dandine in her black silk. I put my arms around them. They put their arms around me. Then I go back to my bedroom. I read as I undress. The scientist is ready to attack. Mama calls, "Is your light out?" I call back, "Yes," and turn the light out. Forced out of life into bed. For a moment, I lie comfortless in the blank darkness. Then, as I always do, I put on the earphones of the crystal set. Each bed has its earphones, and the uneasy tissue of their far-off star sound of the blue-violet of space surrounds the sweet voice from the tabernacle of the four-square gospel. A vague marionette, tall auburn, holds her arms out to unshackle the bonds of sin, of sleep, as, next instant, the sun holds its arms out through the fig, the lemon tree. In the backyard, the clucking hens all cackle as Mama brings their chicken feed. I see my magazine. My magazine. Dressing for school, I read how the good world wins its victory over that bad man. Books, bookstrap, jump the footstool you made in manual training. Then we three sit down, and one says grace. And then, by rule, by that habit that moves the stars, some coffee, one spoonful is poured out into my milk, and the milk, transubstantiated, is coffee. And Mama's weekday wash dress, Dandine's soft black silk, are ways that habit itself makes holy. Just as on Sunday mornings, Wednesday nights, His will comes in their ways of church, of prayer meeting, to set free the spirit from the flesh it questions. So unquestioned, my own habit moves me to and through and from school like a domino, till home I wake to find that I am playing dominoes with Dandine. Her old face is slow in pleasure, slow in doubt, as she sits weighing strategies. Patient, equable, and humble, she hears what this last child of hers is saying in pride or bewilderment. And she will grumble like a child or animal when, indifferent to the reasons of my better self, I mumble, "I'd better stop now. The rabbit." I relent and play her one more game. It is miraculous to have a great-grandmother. I feel different from others, as between moves we discuss the war between the states. The cheerful troops ride up to our farmhouse, steal from us the spoons, the horses. When their captain stoops to Dandine and puts Dandine on his horse, she cries. As I run by the chicken coops with lettuce for my rabbit, real remorse hurts me here, now. The little girl is crying because I didn't write. Because, of course, I was a child. I missed them so. But justifying hurts too. If only I could play you one more game, see you all one more time. I think of you dying, forgiving me, or not. It is all the same to the forgiven. My rabbit's glad to see me. He scrambles to me, gives me little tame bites before he eats the lettuce. His furry, long, warm, soft, floppy ears, his crinkly nose are reassuring to a child. They guarantee, as so much here does, that the child knows who takes care of him, whom he takes care of. Mama comes out and takes in the clothes from the clothesline. She looks with righteous love at all of us, her spare face half a girl's. She enters a chicken coop, and the hens shove and flap and squawk in fear. The whole flock whirls into the farthest corner. She chooses one, comes out, and wrings its neck. The body hurls itself out, lunging, reeling. It begins to run away from something, to fly away from something in great flopping circles. Mama stands like a nun in the center of each awful, anguished ring. The thudding and scrambling go on, go on. Then they fade. I open my eyes. It's over. Could such a thing happen to anything? It could to a rabbit, I'm afraid. It could to Mama. You won't kill Reddy ever. You won't ever, will you? A farm woman tries to persuade the little boy, her grandson, that she'd never kill the boy's rabbit, never even think of it. You would like to believe her. And whenever I see her there in that dark infinite, standing like Judith with a hen's head in her hand, I explain it away in vain. A hypocrite like all who love. Into the blue wonderland of Hollywood, the sun sinks, past the eucalyptus, the Sphinx, the windmill, and I watch and read and hold my story tight. And when the bus stops at the corner and Pop steps down, and I run out to meet him, a blurred nimbus, half red, half gold, and chance his sober brown face, his stooped shoulders into the All-Fathers. He tells me about the work he's done downtown. We sit there on the steps. My universe mended almost. I tell him about the scientist. I say, he couldn't really, could he, Pop? My comforter's eyes light up, and he laughs. No, that's just play. Just make-believe, he says. The sky is gray, We sit there at the end of our good day. Thank you very much.